In some of the most dangerous cities in America, where streets are overrun by coke dealers, those who have sworn to uphold the law are breaking them to clean up the streets. At least that's what they think in their own right. The rise of crack and gang violence in the 80s has birthed some of the most corrupted and dangerous police officers Uncle Sam has ever seen. These cops possible were more ruthless and vicious than most of the worst criminals in the United States. These cops thought that they were untouchable, but they went too far. These are the stories of the most dangerous cops in American history. Number 3. Wayne Jenkins. Wayne Earl Jenkins was born and raised in Middle River, Maryland. He graduated from Eastern Technical High School and later served 3 years in the United States Marine Corps, where he was noted for his discipline and leadership. Jenkins joined the Baltimore Police Department in 2003 at the age of 23, quickly gaining a reputation as an aggressive and effective officer. Jenkins' rise in the Baltimore Police Department was marked by his involvement in various plainclothes units that operated with considerable independence. Known for his relentless approach to policing, Jenkins was praised for his ability to recover guns and drugs, leading to numerous accolades and rapid promotions. By 2016, Jenkins had become the head of an elite unit tasked with removing illegal firearms from the streets of Baltimore. Despite his outward success, Jenkins led a double life, using his position to commit numerous crimes. Under his leadership, his special task force engaged in activities such as robbing narcotics dealers, planting evidence, conducting illegal searches, and falsifying police reports. The unit also engaged in overtime fraud, significantly inflating their earnings. One of Jenkins's most notorious practices was the use of illegal GPS tracking units to monitor and target narcotics dealers, whom he referred to as monsters. Jenkins would rob these dealers of cash and drugs, sometimes selling the stolen narcotics through a bail bondsman with whom he conspired. This partnership involved regular drop-offs of narcotics at the bondsman's waterfront home, contributing significantly to their illicit profits. In one detailed instance, after detaining a suspect near Pimlico Racecourse, Jenkins contacted his bail bondsman, indicating he had apprehended a monster, a term Jenkins used to describe high-value targets in the illicit trade. Jenkins' modus operandi included carrying around a duffel bag with a burglar's toolkit to facilitate breaking into homes or stash houses of these high-value targets, an approach that allowed him to steal large sums of money and narcotics, which were then sold on the streets. His task force criminal activities were eventually uncovered through a federal investigation that began with wiretaps on a member of the unit. In March 2017, Jenkins and 6 other members of the Special Task Force were indicted on federal charges. The investigation revealed that Jenkins had been involved in numerous criminal acts dating back to at least 2011. Jenkins was arrested and later pled guilty to a range of charges, including racketeering and civil rights violations. In June 2018, Jenkins was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His case highlighted significant flaws within the Baltimore Police Department, including a culture of flexibility in plainclothes units that allowed such corruption to flourish. The depth of Jenkins' criminal activities, including his role in targeting and robbing high-level narcotics dealers under the guise of law enforcement, underscored the systemic issues within the department. Number 2. Michael Dowd. Michael Dowd was born on January 10, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York. He was the third of 7 children and was raised on Long Island by an Irish-American firefighter. Dowd was bright, and his parents encouraged him to become a doctor, but he gravitated towards his father's vocation in public service. Dowd took both police and firefighter tests after high school and joined the NYPD. In 1986, Michael Dowd slid deeper into corruption after 11 officers in the nearby 77th Precinct were arrested on extortion charges. It was a huge scandal, and Dowd believed the NYPD wouldn't want to risk repeating it by indicting even more of their own. Remarkably, Dowd saw it as a chance to amplify his illegal behaviors. Dowd shook dealers down every time he went in the poorest neighborhoods, extorting them into protection payments, and he recruited some of his peers into the racket. Soon after that, Dominican drug dealer Adam Diaz heard about him and made him an employee. Diaz used supermarkets in East New York as fronts for his lucrative coke operations and wanted an inside man to warn him of outside threats. He bought Dowd out for $24,000 and a weekly $8,000 salary. In addition to warning Diaz of raids, Dowd and his crew of cops even began robbing competing dealers for Diaz in 1986. When Dowd's 1987 performance review came in, praising his excellent street knowledge and good career potential, he felt untouchable. And for a while he was. By the early 1990s, Michael Dowd was making so much money on the side that he sometimes forgot to pick up his actual NYPD paycheck. But he also started drinking heavily, often on the job, and he started using his own supply. And in 1992, his entire life came crashing down. On May 6, 1992, police barged into the drug house Ken Urell was supervising and cuffed him. Dowd was on shift, high on coke and drunk on vodka, and was arrested on drug conspiracy charges when he returned to the precinct. It soon became clear that the FBI had been investigating Diaz and recorded Dowd and Urell talking about narcotics deals and payments over the phone. The two partners faced federal and state cases that could see them imprisoned for 25 years. After being released on bail, they met to reassess. Unaware Urell was wearing a wire in exchange for a lesser sentence, Michael Dowd was recorded plotting the abduction of a Colombian woman who vanished with $200,000 worth of coke belonging to a local dealer. Dowd would be paid enough to flee to Nicaragua in return for finding her, but Urell's tape put him behind bars. Michael Dowd was arrested in July 1992. He was indicted for homicide, conspiracy, and narcotics-related offenses. Dowd testified before the commission in September 1993 and admitted that he had considered himself both a cop and a coke trafficker. In 1994, he was convicted of racketeering and conspiracy to distribute narcotics. He was sentenced to 16 years and served 12 years and 6 months. Since Michael Dowd's release from prison, he has advocated against the very corruption that ruined his life. Number 1. Raphael Perez. Raphael Perez was born in Puerto Rico in 1967, when he was 5 years old when his mother moved him and his 2 brothers to the United States. Perez's father stayed behind in Puerto Rico. The closest Perez came to seeing him was by a photograph. Perez and his family eventually moved to North Philadelphia, According to Perez, the family initially stayed with an uncle who dealt narcotics, where he witnessed firsthand the flow of the street trade. It furthered his resolve to become a cop, which he was always interested in as a little kid. Following high school, Raphael Perez entered the Marines, then applied to the LAPD. He entered the Los Angeles Police Academy in June 1989. Following his probation period, Perez worked patrol in Wiltshire Division. Perez adopted a different persona as a cop. He knew he was inexperienced in law enforcement, so he acted with authority. In time, his reputation as a streetwise aggressive cop got him transferred into an undercover narcotics team in Rampart Division. Perez spoke fluent Spanish, and his personality fit right in with the swagger of the gangs he was tasked with going after. Perez, like many young officers, felt the adrenaline rush of buying narcotics from street dealers, relishing in the power and authority of it. One of the most corrupt examples happened just a year after Perez joined Crash. On October 12, 1996, Perez and his partner, Nino Durden, shot and framed 19-year-old Javier Ovando, an unarmed gang member. The shooting had left Ovando paralyzed from the waist down. According to Perez, they were conducting narcotic surveillance from an apartment in an unoccupied building when they justifiably shot Ovando. At Ovando's trial in 1997, Perez and Durden lied. They stated Ovando burst into the apartment attempting to slaughter them. Ovando disputed their story. The apartment building wasn't abandoned. He lived there on the same floor as the observation post. Ovando stated the officers had harassed him and knocked on his door the day of the shooting, demanding to come inside. Once inside, they handcuffed and shot him. It meant nothing. Raphael Perez and Nino Durden were golden boys in the eyes of the law. Ovando was convicted and sentenced to 23 years in prison based on the perjury of Perez and Durden. It would be years before he was freed. On March 27, 1998, Raphael Perez became a magician. He made 6 pounds of coke disappear from the police property room. Within a week of the theft, detectives focused on him. In May 1998, the LAPD created an internal investigative task force. It focused primarily on the prosecution of Perez. An audit of the LAPD property room had identified another pound of missing coke. On August 25, 1998, task force investigators arrested Perez. His initial response to arrest was, "Is this about the bank robbery?" No. It was about those 6 pounds of coke that had vanished. The coke had been checked out of the property room by Perez under another officer's name. Worth up to $800,000 on the street, Perez had resold it through a girlfriend. In December 1998, Raphael Perez, having been charged with possession of coke with intent to sell, grand theft, and forgery, was brought to trial. After 5 days of deliberations, the jury announced that it was deadlocked, with a final vote of 8-4 favoring conviction. Prosecutors began preparing their case for a retrial. Investigators uncovered another 11 instances of suspicious coke transfers from the Rampart property room. Perez pulled off his magic trick again. He ordered the coke evidence from property and replaced it with biscuit. Correctly sensing a lengthy conviction, Perez cut a deal on September 8, 1999, according to an LAPD press release. He pleaded guilty to the coke theft and provided information to investigators about Rampart crash officers involved in illegal activity. Raphael Perez received a 5-year sentence and immunity from further prosecution. Perez began confessions with the story of Javier Ovando. As a result of his plea deal, Perez was required to cooperate with investigators looking into the Rampart crash unit. Over 9 months, Perez admitted to hundreds of instances of perjury, fabrication of evidence, and false arrests. He admitted stealing narcotics from police evidence lockers and reselling them on the street. He admitted stealing narcotics, guns, and cash from gang members. The Rampart unit sought to send neighborhood gang members to prison, whether they committed crimes or not. In the end, Raphael Perez implicated 70 other officers, including former partner Nino Durden. As a result of the Rampart scandal, Javier Ovando's 23-year conviction was vacated, with the charges dismissed. Los Angeles awarded him $15 million in compensation, the largest police misconduct settlement in the city's history.